Hello, can you state your name?
My name is Nguyen Ngoc Linh.
Where and when was you born, sir?
I was born in Hanoi, Vietnam.
Um, you have any memory, your childhood memory in Hanoi? Can you share with us?
Well, memories we got a lot, but I don't know which to share. But anyway, the Hanoi that I knew was a very nice place. It's like a small French city. It was and we are, there are 10 brothers and sisters in the family. So we had a very big house, and the my brothers and sisters are divided into three groups actually. The first group it consists of my older brother, or two older sisters, and the second group consisted of me and my two brothers, and the third group consisted of one sister and two brothers.
How you divide that? Because of character of
Because of age. Actually, my oldest brother was born 1920, and the the youngest of that group is my sister, who was born 1925. I was born in 1930, and then next to me were two brothers born 1931 and 1933. The third group consisted of my sister, who was born 1936, and then two brothers that were born 1937, 1938.
wow, wonderful. So how do you play together with your brother sister? Do you have toy or you talk or you play game or can
All kinds of things. For example, my brothers and I used to play cards, and we're not supposed to play cards. We're supposed to go to bed. But then we covered our head with the cover sheets, and then play cards under the sheets, and all kinds of things. And we made our own toys because at that time there were no toy stores, and we made toys with by ourselves, like little carts made with matchboxes, and that we tow around, that we pull around with, with some kind of uh, some kind of the and then push around, and then we had a lot of exercise also. We we played, just the three of us. We were very close on account of our age, and of course I was the leader, being the oldest. and, but anyway, we had a lot of fun, and but the and even to this day, the three of us are still very close. One is in Brother Fak is in Australia. Brother Nya is in San Jose, California, and I'm here. So, but we still communicate very, very frequently. And the the my older brother, my two older brothers were, have died already, and actually all the four of them of the first group has died. My two sisters have died also. My the last one to die was my brother Chuck, who was with the Voice of America here in Washington, and he died about not quite a year ago.
Sorry to hear that. Can you describe your hometown where you play with your brothers? What it looked like in Hanoi? And then
Well, we had, my father was a Mandarin. He started out being like a district manager, and then he ended up in his career as governor of a province in Vietnam. So, we move around quite a bit, but we always kept Hanoi as our place where we go to school, where we're supposed to attend all the French schools in Hanoi. So and my father kept a house in Hanoi where all the brothers and sisters stayed there, with the exception of my oldest sister, who was supposed to take care of my father wherever he happened to be working, and while my mother was staying in Hanoi taking care of all of us. So we had a very interesting life, moving around all over North Vietnam, and and then when we were attending the French schools, we even fought against the French kids, and it was very, very interesting because we used all kinds of. We went to school on a cyclopus, all the three of us, and we armed ourselves with sticks and then and even pockets full of sand, so that we can throw in their eyes, throw in their eyes. And, but I don't know what happened, but after we fought against one small group of French or half French people, then we became very good friends after that. And,
so the battle from the kid is end up with a happy ending.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you seem like you have a very good childhood life of a very, I would say that upper class in Vietnam. You have an opportunity to go out to the rural and see people, and what do you feel about that? Do you remember?
Oh yes, when I was a kid, not yet going to school or going to school to preparatory, the primary school or something like that. I was living with my father, and in the various places where he worked, and being the son of the governor was a big privilege, and the teachers really gave us all kinds of privileges. I remember the first time I went to school, I went to a what do you call it, a elementary school, and I was 5 years old, and I was so scared that I became incontinent. So and I didn't have the nerve to ask the teacher to go to the bathroom, so I pulled in my pants. And 4-year-old, 5-year-old, the teacher had to wash me and then take me home. And those are, even now that I'm 80 years old, I still remember like yesterday the day that I pooed in my pants.
Lucky teacher.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we the help, the domestic help, used to spoil us quite a bit. But the clerical help of my father did not spoil us at all. So when they go to the market, the domestic help or the cook used to buy us some small earthenware toys, like the figure of a genie or of a god or of a nun. The who used to buy us the figure, the picture, or the not the picture, but the earthenware of a pagoda, and we used to play at my brother and I, we used to play at the at the offering, making offerings to the Buddha and things like that. And we were not supposed to play in the house, so we had to play outside in the garden, some corner of the garden. And the clerical help of my father, I don't know whether he did it by mistake or whether he did it intentionally, but one time he urinated on our hotel on our hotels. So we took revenge on him while one day he was taking a nap, and he had a kekhan, and so we took the kekhan, the turban, and we put some dog shit in there. And we were only 5-6 years old, but we were already playing such a terrible game.
Okay. I saw you put out here, you ingest the ship. Can you explain what kind of religion is that and how you worship?
Well, you just, like all Vietnamese, we worship the ancestors. Some people mischaracterize it as being Buddhist, but actually it's not Buddhist, because we go to the pagoda and worship at, and in front of the Buddha. But in reality, we just worship the ancestors, the memory of the ancestors. We remember the date of their death, and every year we not celebrate, but we remember, make big festival. The family got together, and celebrate the memory of the ancestors. When my father was when we were kids, my father and mother used to tell us stories about our grandparents, how they grew up and how my grandfather treated them, and so on and so forth. So there's always a recognition of the family history that all of us still remember still today.
Well, what grade was you when you in North Vietnam? When North and South Vietnam divided by 17 parallel. What was you doing at that time?
No, I lived in North Vietnam from 1930, the year of my birth, until 1948.
Oh.
After I graduated from the lycée, the high school, and then I went down for 1 year, 1949, to finish the baccalaureate, the second part, before I went to the United States for further for further studies. I got a scholarship to go to the United States and went there in 1950, from 1950 to 1955.
What you were studying in the United States?
I got a scholarship on a chemistry, the chemical engineering. But when I came to the U.S., I saw all the opportunities to, and I love journalism. I love to read. I like to write, and I saw the opportunities for freedom of the press and freedom of expression, things like that. So I switched to political science and economics. And then after I graduated from college, I went to, as an intern, to the New York Times in New York for a couple of years.
What year was this?
I graduated from Bowdoin College in 1952, and I worked for 2 years with the New York Times until 1954. I went home in 1955 when Mr. Nguyen called me and asked me to come back. Because when he was spending time in the United States, I was very close to him. You know, he missed Vietnamese food and Chinese food. So from Ossining, New York, which is way up north of the state of New York, he usually took the train down, and I would pick him up in New York Central Station and took him back to the apartment of some of my friends, where he spent a lot of time with me. So I got to know him very well, and he knew my father because he was not only the governor of one of the provinces in central Vietnam, but he ended up being a minister of the king, like the prime minister of the king. So he knew my father, and then so he was telling me at that time he was only about 1950. He was only about 50 something, 54, 55, but he was already reminiscing, like all old men. So I was very curious. So I asked him about the time when he quit the Mandarin, being a Mandarin, when he was against the French, so on and so forth. So he was telling me all of these things, which are quite interesting to a young man, 20, 22, 23 years old. And so when he went back as Prime Minister of Vietnam, he asked one of his assistants to send me a telegram. Country needs you, come back. Boy, that was for a kid of 23, 24. It was quite a thing. I was very proud of myself. So I took my wife and my kid, who was only 5 months old, and went right back to join the not the revolution, but to join the administration. But the funny thing is that when I went back, at the same time that Mr. Diem asked me to get back, he also asked a few other American educated Vietnamese to come back. So, and he was very busy with the Binh Xuyen, with the Hoa Hao, with the French, with the French educated generals. So he had a lot of problems. So he didn't have time for us he didn't have time to decide what should we do. So we used to stay in the basement of Independence Palace waiting for our job. And I went home and I had about $100 or $200 in my pocket, but that's all. And I had a wife who didn't have a work, who didn't have any job, and I had a 5-year-old kid, and I had an older mother and my brother, my older brother, was nearly bankrupt because he was not such a good businessman. So I had to do something in order to have a job. So I ran into the director of USAID, which at that time was called USOM, United States Operations Mission, and he was looking for an assistant. So I just fit in right there. He hired me, very big salary, and the funny thing is that Mr. Ziem has a very elephant memory. So he kept something against me because he called me back. I didn't wait for him to name me to a position in the administration, but I went to work for the Americans. Ooh, wow. So, so in 1963, when the draft began, the draft began, the first one was me. He said, ask Mr. Ling, call Mr. Ling. So, but the president was very funny. He had like Mr. Nguyen, who was like a son to him, and then he had Mr. Do Vang Lee, who had a PhD in politics, but who were very poor translators. So, and Mr. Ziem was very proud of being Vietnamese president or Vietnamese prime minister. So whenever the Americans came, he spoke pretty good English, but he didn't speak English. He spoke Vietnamese, and he needs a translator. So in the first he called Nguyen Thai. Nguyen Thai was a lousy translator, and then he asked Do Vang Lee. Do Vang Lee was bad translator. So he told his secretary, Mr. Vo Van Hai, invite Mr. Ling. So, and I was not afraid of President Ziem because, he's like a family friend. So, he talks endlessly. He does not stop for me to translate. So, and I was the only one of the 4 or 5 of the translators who said, please, Mr. President, can you stop so I can translate? And then I had, I make shorthand notes, so I translate very well. And so every time that there was an American visitor, he always asked Mr. Vo Van Hai, call Mr. Ling, hey, mời ông Linh, hey. So the funny thing is that the president smoked endlessly, one after the other. He never stops. So they have a big ashtray right in front of him, and he was sitting like this, and he was, he didn't have time. He didn't smoke at all, but he always had a lit cigarette, and he would put the ash in the ashtray like that. And I was sitting behind him, and I also was a big smoker. But before we went into his office, into the living room, into the guest room, living room, Mr. Hai always asked all the visitors and myself, please do not smoke. The president doesn't like for you to smoke. So the American admiral, the American four-star general, did not dare to smoke. But I told Mr. Hai, I said, well, if I don't smoke, I cannot translate. So as soon as the president light the cigarette, I light my own cigarette. So, of course, they did not leave the big ashtray for me. So I look around, and there was no ashtray in the back. So I put the ash on the floor, on the carpet, and the thick carpet of the Vietnamese carpet, what's his name? So immediately they rush around and gave me an ashtray.
Okay, Mr. Nguyen, you very close to the President Diem. What do you think of him? And can you explain what is your opinion that he? You think that he is a good leader, fair leader, or what is do you think of him?
Well, my judgment of him was, of course, because I know him very well. I know that he was very patriotic. He's very proud of being Vietnamese, and very devoted to the cause of Vietnam. So I give him that. Of course, he surrounds himself with Mr. Nhu. Madame Nhu was very bad, and the Archbishop was his older brother was very bad. His youngest brother, Mr. Cut, was not bad at all, because he had his own territory out there. He was a king out there, but he was pretty good also. And the reason why I think that the Ambassador Cabot Lodge recommended to the President Kennedy to get rid of him was that he didn't want to listen to the American all the time, because he was very proud of being Vietnamese. He knows Vietnamese mentality, so he did not want to listen to the stupid ideas of the Americans, and then some of the ideas were very stupid. So I gave him. The only problem is that he was a very good brother. So he gave. He supported or listened to his brother Nhu. Brother Nhu was Machiavellic, good ideas and things like that, but he did not think it through, and he wanted to make Mr. Diem a dictator. Mr. Diem was not a dictator, but he already had the tendency, being a Mandarin, he had a tendency to be the father and mother of the people already, phụ mẫu, and so you don't have to teach him to be a dictator. So, and he likes to act as the father and mother of the people, and Mr. Nhu played into that hand, and Mrs. Nhu took that opportunity to become, first lady, and then her word being law, like when she stupidly declared that the dancing is illegal, and so on and so forth. And she wanted to play up the role of the Vietnamese woman, but she didn't do it the right way. She wanted to play up the role of the Vietnamese woman as the head of the family, as my word is the law in the family. So and she made a lot of mistakes, like when the Reverend Thich Tin Khiet burned himself. She said, "Oh, it's barbecue," idiotic things like that.
Well, when you said that Mr. Nguyen was a good man, he good for Vietnam, but he's surrounded with some people that not really good for him, and you point out Mr. Nguyen was one of them, and then also Archbishop Nguyen. Can you explain in which way that Nguyen was bad for him? One of you point out that he want to build his own brother like a dictator. What do you think that he do that harm President Nguyen?
Well, the first they play Mr. Siem up as a demigod. You know, they sometimes even the president didn't say things like that, but they make it up. They say the president said things like that. And then when the president, there are lots of stories that I'm aware of, like around Tet and Christmas, he likes to go down the market and ask the people how you doing, things like that. But they always send the secret police around and telling the merchants, say that when the president asks you how you doing, you better say that you are doing very well. The economy is good, so on and so forth. When he asks how much is this toy, instead of saying 150 piastres, you better say $10, 10 piastres. So give the president a erroneous idea of the economy. When he goes to visit the Ấp Chiến Lược, overnight they bring the banana trees and plant there just for one day, with full of bananas and things like that. Just to they're so afraid of him being disillusioned or misinformed about the economy that they did idiotic things like that.
Not a good presidency was out of touch because of this.
Exactly, yeah, because the people around him were spoiling him, not only spoiling him, but they were bluffing him, and the president had some shortcomings, like he doesn't like the Baki at all, because he's from Central Vietnam. So he could use the people from South Vietnam, but he was very not scary, but he was not very sympathetic with the Baki. So he only used some ministers as from North Vietnam, without being very trustful of them. So, and then his ministers were also not scared of him, but they were very respectful in an idiotic way. Like this, the story of Mr. Vu Quoc Thúc, not Vu Quoc Thúc, Vu Quoc Thông. Vu Quoc Thông was a minister of labor, and then after meeting with the president, if he turns around and walk out, no, he goes backward and broke one of the precious vase, not vase, but cái đôn, cái thúng, idiotic things like that. Why did he have to do that? Because he's an agrégé himself. He's a professor, full professor of law at the law school. Why did he have to do that?
And what about Archbishop Nguyen? What did
Yeah, he has his own. He's more or less like my grandpa. He has his own court. Down there in Vĩnh Long. So if you want to do something, you go down there and say, Monsignor, I would like to do this, and so on and so forth. So Monsignor just called his brother and asked for that, and usually, sometime his brother say, okay, and so he has his own court. My grandfather used to be that way. That when my father was governor of Bắc Ninh province, Bắc Ninh is our hometown. So when my father was governor of Bắc Ninh, my grandfather in our village was holding court there. So if they cannot ask my father for something, they came there, and my grandfather would call my father saying, "Hey, I got this cousin of ours who would like to say something. Can you help?" So in the end, after a few months, my father was so sick and tired of having, a shadow governor that he quit. He asked for a smaller province, but which is not the hometown. So that's why they sent him to Nguyen, which was, a very small, not very, but it was pretty small province, much smaller than Bắc Ninh.
In the 1954, how your family, fled to the south, like the rest of the people up north ran away from communists, or because of you are upper class and they treat you more special?
No, my brother Chuck was, in when the communists took over, they immediately arrested my brother Chuck, who was a Quốc Đảng, and they arrested. I was 16 years old, 15 and a half years old, and the family did not have any income, so I took over our garage and made and transformed it into a restaurant, a pho restaurant.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know how to cook pho, so I went to an ambulance man, and I said, chú, I made a bet with my mom that I know how to cook pho, and if I don't know how to cook pho, my mom would laugh at me. Can you please help? So the guy, told me what to do, and I prepared that. I brought it over to him. He said, "Not quite. You got to do this." Okay, I corrected, and then in the end, I cooked a very decent bowl of pho. Wow. To this day, even to this day. And I named the restaurant Hai Ho.
Oh, wow.
The stupid communist police, when they arrested me, they say, "Why do you put Mr. Hai Thân in front of Mr. Ho Chi Minh?"
Oh, wow.
Hai Ho. So I said, Hai Ho does not mean Hai Thân in front of Ho Chi Minh.
Hai Thân, he's Quốc Đảng.
Yeah, he was a Quốc Đảng. Very funny. So they arrested Brother Chak. Brother Anh was up in the ranch, so they didn't touch him. Brother Chak was a Quốc Đảng, and they arrested me for Hai Ho. And when they came to the house, they found a lot of guns, because the Chinese troops that came to Vietnam to accept the surrender of the Japanese, they had lots of Japanese guns. So, but they did not have the money. They didn't have the money. So they came to my restaurant and ate, and they said, "Don't have any money." So I worked it out that if you don't have any money, you bring me the guns, and I give you one gun for 2 bowls of pho. And for sao is one gun for 1 for sao, so on and so forth. So they did that, and the Chinese were very funny. They say, "Well, you don't know how to cook. Let me cook." So I say, "Okay, go ahead. Here's the meat. Here's the vegetable. You go in the kitchen. You cook yourself, and you bring me the guns." and then I brought the guns to the Quốc Đảng. That's why they arrested me.
How many guns did you make?
Oh God, they must have found about 25 or 30 guns when they came to arrest me. And then my brother-in-law was sick in the house. They arrested him too. He had nothing to do with the guns or the Quốc Đảng. And my sister, his wife, was was also arrested, and then they thought it over and they said no, they don't want to arrest, but they arrested him. They arrested her husband, who was just a teacher, and we were brought to the central jail there, and we were interrogated, and of course my brother Chuck didn't say anything, and I said I don't know anything about guns or Quốc dân đảng or anything. I'm only a kid, 15 years old, and but my brother Bing, my brother-in-law, was very mad. He says, "I'm sick. I'm a teacher. All I know is to teach, and you idiots just." So they beat him up real bad, which is funny because when they beat him up real bad, they made an enemy out of him. So after they found out that he had nothing to do with it, they released him. But after they released him, he joined he joined the Viet Minh army.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and went to the first school for officers in Tông province, in Tông city. And after 3 months of training, he asked all of his classmates to go back to the headquarters of the secret police and beat everybody up. But he was already an officer of the Viet Minh army, so they couldn't do anything to him. He eventually became a full colonel, and but before, my sister was still, had a baby, and her baby died, and so he joined the Viet Minh army. He fought everywhere, and by that time my sister had died. So they said that if you swear to become a communist party member, we'll name you general. He said, no, I don't want to be Communist Party, stupid Communist Party member. So he was never made a general. But in the end, I think that he was a very good general. So in the end, they gave him just 1 star, 1-star general. Oh, in the end, after my sister died for 10 years, then he says, okay, I can marry one of you idiots. So he married one of the agents. I think it was a Công an agent or something like that. But the last I heard about him was that she had with him a couple of kids, but then they gave him a house, a very nice house, and she took over the whole house and kicked him out to the balcony. So he had, so he only had the balcony, with a bed, and then some coffin to protect him from the weather. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
But he's still around, or still alive, or he passed away?
Who?
The brother that...
No, he died. He died.
Okay, so actually, from the governor, son of governor, he became a communist colonel. And then at that time, you all brothers, you would move to the south?
Yeah, Brother Chuck, after he got arrested and released, because my father at that time, before his death, was thinking of some way to save Brother Chuck. So he sent word to Brother Chuck to make believe that he was crazy. So they sent him to the Nhà Thương Điên. They sent him to the when he acted crazy, they sent him to Nhà Thương Điên and then released him. So after they released him, he went down south. Before before 1954. He went down south in 1948 and brought all the kids, Nguyen Big Hall with him. I was the only one that was left back in North Vietnam with my mom. My sister immediately before me was married to a Quốc dân Đảng, and that brother is funny. He was so much in love with his wife that when the Viet Minh attacked the Quốc dân Đảng in Yên Bái, they all the Quốc dân Đảng, all the Quốc dân Đảng went to China, escaped to China. But this guy missed his wife so much that he became like tuk tuk, and he went halfway across the bridge. So the Viet Cong nabbed him, and they nabbed him and they condemned him to death. The funny thing is that when they lined him up against the wall, and the president of the province, the Chủ tịch Ủy ban Nhân dân, looked at him and he says, "You look familiar to me. What's your name?" So, "Who's your dad?" And my brother-in-law is exact replica of his father. So he said, "Well, my name is Trần Lê Tấn and my father is Trần Lê Nhân." Oh my God, he's my teacher.
Almost killed my
Yeah,
sister's son.
almost killed my sister's son. So he had to sign. The president of the People's Party had to sign a warranty that I will, watch out after him, and that so my brother had to sign a paper saying that I will stay with the revolution until the end. So he and his wife and the kids had to stay way back in Lạng Sơn or someplace where they could not escape to Hanoi.
So in 1954, how many members of your family stay back in the north, and how many?
Well, my brother, my brother Tân and his wife, way back up in North Vietnam. My brother was in the Viet Minh army. My brother Binh. Those are family, and my oldest brother, who was with the ranch in Nguyen, and his wife and kids. They were all up there, could not escape. And my mom in Hanoi, and myself. So in 1949, I got a scholarship, and I went to the United States. So my mom was the only one left in Hanoi. And the youngest group of three, Nguyen Big Ho, went south in 1948 or 1947 with Ngoc. So my mom was the only one left in Hanoi. All the other people were stuck out in the Viet Minh zone. When I flew back in 1955 to join Mr. Diem, the first thing that I did was to fly out to Hải Phòng, which was not taken over by the Viet Minh yet. And I sent word I was my mother's favorite son. So I sent word to my mother. I said, "Mom, come to Saigon, I'd come to Hải Phòng to meet me, because afterwards you never know when you're going to meet me again." So my mother just took some keys in her pocket, some money, and in her baba, and went to Haiphong right away, and I kidnapped her, put her on the plane and down there, because she didn't want to leave. She had to take care of the graves of the ancestors and things like that. So she didn't want to leave at all.
May I ask you a question? That how was United States in 1949 when you came here for education? What it looked like? How compared with today?
Oh, it's nothing comparable. You know, the U.S. was a very nice place, very kind place. Practically no crime, actually. There's a very funny thing. I went to school in Maine. They're one of the small schools in Maine, just 450 students, and about 70 PhD teachers. So it was really a good school. And but there was nothing doing, no Chinese food, no Vietnamese food, nothing up there. So I used to go down to New York, but no money. So I had to hitchhike, hitchhike. And the funny thing is that the people were so kind that many times I hitchhiked, and an older lady picked me up, and she said, "Hey, it's 6 o'clock already. You cannot go any further. Why don't you come to my house? I'll feed you, and you can sleep in my house, and I take you back to the highway tomorrow morning." It's just like that, complete stranger. And like when my English pronunciation was very bad, so my teacher of English said, "Well, why don't you come on Saturday at 11? Then I'll spend a few hours with you correcting your English pronunciation." And he said, "But I may not be back from the church yet, but the house is open. You just go in, make yourself at home, and wait for me." Things like that. Nothing like this now. It's very, very nice.
But in terms of building and houses, I mean, much more bigger building now and much more modern building now compared with 1949. How's that go?
No, it was more or less the same, but up there in Maine, the houses are small, and it's single-family houses, and people were very kind to each other and nice neighbors, and every weekend I would be invited to somebody's house up there, for dinner, and and people were not very familiar with geography or anything like that. After 6 months, my English got so good that after 6 months, I accepted to give speeches around the state about Vietnam, about the Vietnam War, and things like that. But at that time, the name Vietnam was not very familiar yet. So I prepared myself very well. I had a big map of Vietnam, and here was Cambodia, here was Laos. The whole thing was French Indochina, and I was explaining, to these ladies, these old ladies, where Vietnam was and how we got into fight with the French and so on and so forth. And there was a lady that was a reporter for the local newspaper. So next day she sent me a copy of the newspaper, and it says, "Student from Indonesia talks." Very funny.
Different.
Yeah, they don't know the difference. And
So with like 49 to, you said come home 54, you were here 6 years, 5 years here?
5 years, yeah.
You think you got good education at that time?
Oh yeah, it was education was very good. It was I made a lot of money because I was good in spelling.
I see.
The funny thing is that the Americans even now are not very good in spelling. And we had a very funny thing is we had a very tough teacher of English. If you make 3 spelling mistake, 0.
Wow.
So then, and I got the reputation of being very good in spelling. So the day before we are to hand in our paper, the kids will come over and say, Linh, can you correct my spelling? And in the beginning I was very nice and I said, okay, here. But there was too many of them, so I started charging 25 cents each. You know? And every week I would make $4 or $5 because all the papers that I had to correct.
What a dollar can you buy?
Ooh, lots of things, because the newspaper is only two cents.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, now back to Vietnam. So you have half the family stay back, very much like more than half. Move to the south, and you with all the first. Ngo Dinh, first president there, were not happy with you because he called you back home and then you work for American after all. But you made good money. Your family is good. You're still well off. And then in the second, President Thieu, I believe you was one of the minister, one of the minister. Can you tell us about after Ngo Dinh would kill, what happened? What do you think about that part of the history in Vietnam?
Oh, it was terrible time because the general didn't know what they were doing. So we had, after Mr. Diem, we had Mr. Minh. Mr. Minh is very slow and he's very southern Vietnamese. He only trusted the people around him, Southerners. So Mr. Khánh, kicked him out. And I was Mr. Khánh press secretary when Mr. Khánh was in Pleiku as the commander of Second Corps. So I became his press secretary of the Prime Minister. And then from then on, one day he said, funny, Mr. Khánh is always like a clown because, his godmother was was an actress, so he's like a clown. One day he said, I was accompanying him everywhere, and one day he said, he told the general that was fighting the Viet Minh, the Viet Cong, he said, well, why don't you lob 50 rounds of cannon in that place? And that place was only sand, so you cannot do anything with sand. You lob the big cannon there, and it does not move the sand at all, or it moves the sand around. So I was only a lieutenant, and he's a 4-star general. So, and I said, General, this only moves the sand. It doesn't do anything. So he says, biết gì nói? So
No, nothing.
you know nothing. And he gave me 15 days of jail. 15 days.
Who were doing press conference for him when you were in prison?
Yeah. It happened a couple of times like that. One day, I always translate for him when he has a big press conference. And he's always proud. He's not like Mr. Ziem. He's very proud that he speaks good English. In fact, he does not speak good English. So and in fact, some of his answers are pretty naive. So I try to make it better for him, to make him look better. And he had the nerve to say, "C'est pas ça. It's not that." Oh, okay. You have touched my nerve, Professor Ling. So from that minute on, whatever he says, like he always says, "Vous voyez, vous voyez." So
It's a French term, isn't it?
yeah, French term, "Vous voyez," and I say, "Do you see? Do you see?" So I translate every stupid word that he says. In the end, he looked so ridiculous that he said, "You go right ahead. I give you." As a general, he has the power to put the people in jail for 15 days. So I was in military jail for 15 days. But the next day, he called General Cao, who is his assistant. He said, "Is Ling in jail?" And General Cao said, "Of course, I sent him to jail yesterday." And but General Cao got worried, and so he called the military jail and said, "Where's Mr. Ling?" "Oh, he's right here. He's reading Kim Hill, right here. Let me talk to him." So I talked to General Cao, and General Cao says, "Are you in jail?" "Yeah, of course I'm in jail. The general sent me to jail." So he reported back to General Khanh, and General Khanh says, "What the hell is he doing in jail? Release him. Tell him to report to me." So, he's such a clown, So I got released. I got an order to report to the Prime Minister, and Mr. Khanh says, "Do you want to be Director General of the radio?" Just like that. You could go right away. So, but anyway, from then, from the radio, I went to, when Mr. Quat became Prime Minister, Phan Huy Quat, became Prime Minister. He asked me to become Director General of Vietnam Press. And then from then on, the Vietnam Press story is unbelievable. Because then, when Mr. Quat quit, I stayed there as Director General of Vietnam Press. And so the generals took over. Cao Kỳ and General Ngoc, they were all so immature. Like on his way to a press conference, he nearly gave the foreign minister, Mr. Do, a heart attack when he said, "Break relations with France."
That's it?
Just like that, when we were crossing the street. So Mr. Do says, "Say what, General?" "Break relations with de Gaulle. He's an idiot." Okay, so, we sent it. We called Mr. Do called the French ambassador, said, "Well, you break relations."
You go to hell.
And when de Gaulle got the news, the newspaper asked him about Mr. K, breaking relations with France. So de Gaulle had the famous word, qui est qui? Who is qui? Qui est qui? And, but anyway, he's always make pronouncements without thinking. All the generals, General Ngoc, General K.
No process.
No process, no thinking. And it was a very tough time for me because I was Director General of Vietnam Press, I'm supposed to put out the news. You know, what kind of news is that? So I sent my reporters to tell every general, and the reporters reported everything to me. I corrected put out all the stupidities. I corrected every word that the general said. But still, one time, Mr. Carr said something. Nguyễn Hữu Có. Mr. Carr said something, and Doãn Bình reported it word for word. And I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "I swear on my daughter's head that he did say that." Okay, so this is very important. I don't even know what it was, but it's very important, so I'll let it go. Next day, the order from Mr. Carr to come over, for Doãn Bình to come over, and so that I can arrest him. So because when I received the news, I took Doãn Bình over to Mr. Carr, and I said, "Well, General, I don't know whether you said that or not, but my reporter swear that you said that, and I have a second reporter that was with Doãn Bình that also swear that you did make that pronouncement." Okay, well, because you are here, I'm not going to arrest him or put him in jail, but he better be careful. Yes, General, thank you very much. Okay, we didn't get arrested. But then, as soon as I got home, I took $500, green dollars, and went to Air Vietnam to see those friends of mine that are the girls that go to Hong Kong. So, and I said, please pick up 5 or 10 what do you call those tape recorders for me. I gave each one of my reporters one tape recorder, record everything from now on, so that I can have proof, because you don't have proof, and his word against yours, you lose. So from that time on, there's no more problem.
Wow. So I think that you become a general secretary of the press until 1975. From
Director General
yes.
of Press and Information. Yeah, that was one of Mr. Newfound Levantian's stupid ideas, because he said, Mr. Ngoc, Prime Minister Ngoc, asked me to join the cabinet when I was Director General of Vietnam Press, and he said, okay, you Minister of Information. So Newfound Levantian had a better move, better idea. He says, no, you should be only Director General, because Director General is a technician, so they cannot fire you. But Minister, they can fire you anytime. So I was stupid enough to listen to him, and I said, okay, Mr. Prime Minister, I don't want to be Minister of Information. I want to be just Director General. But the Director General at that time, with me as Director General, we had 9 directorates. 9 nhà against 5 directorates when we were under ministry. So, but it doesn't matter, because when Mr. Thiệu became president, he didn't trust me. He said, well, you're one of Key's men, so he, and it's not only that he didn't trust me, Mr. cái ông già gì, ông già gì mà thay thế Linh ấy nhỉ?
The last
Before.
general director
Không,
after you.
làm tổng trưởng thông tin.
Nhã.
Không phải Nhã là sau này. Ông well, anyway, cái ông cách mạng đó, cái ông mà nhà cách mạng. My memory is failing me. Anyway, cái ông đó ông ấy khóc với lại ông Thiệu. He cried with President Thiệu. He said, well, you know, I've been doing cách mạng all my life and nobody recognized that all of these you know, good things that I did, so you better give me a good position. So Mr. Thiệu says, Ân.
Oh,
Trần Văn Ân. Không phải Trần Văn Ân. Ông Ân già chứ không phải Trần Văn Ân là trung tá đâu. Anyway, ông là ông Ân. So Mr. Thiệu says, what can I do for you? Well, name me Minister of Information. So that's why I have to give up the job and give it back to Mr. Trần Văn Ân. And then immediately after that, Mr. Key was named to the Paris Peace Talks. And he asked me whether I want to be the press person, the spokesman for the South Vietnamese delegation in Paris. So I said, why not? I went to Paris and had lots of good fight with the Viet Cong and the FLN, the Giải phóng miền Nam, things like that. Had a real good time.
Was it the time that they have conference then they were taking a long time to argue about whether they can have a round table?
Yeah, exactly. That's the time.
Can you describe what was it and then what happened and how they end up into the?
Well, they were making problems out of nothing. You know, whether we had a round table, whether we had a square table. A square table would be on the Vietnamese side, the South Vietnam and North Vietnam, and on the Vietnamese South Vietnam side, the American and South Vietnam, and on their side, the Giải phóng miền Nam and North Vietnam. Either that or the round table. It's very frustrating to spend day in, day out talking about these idiotic things. But when we finally settled with a table, I had a great time, playing around with those southern Giải phóng miền Nam. I was the press secretary of the Vietnamese, South Vietnamese delegation, and on the other side, Mrs. Bing had a translator because she didn't speak English or French or anything. So she had a translator who was not very good. So I was a young man, I'd like to play tricks on these people because I know that if you are disturbed, you cannot translate.
Okay.
So, and at the beginning of when the conference started, I was looking around, and Mrs. Nguyen was looking at me, was really lump. Yeah, was staring at me. So I didn't lose anything by smiling at her, So she had to respond. She had to to
Bows to you.
to bow too. Yeah. So when her translator saw that she bowed back to me, and I bowed to her, she bowed back. At that time, Mrs. Bing started talking, and she didn't pay attention because she was looking at this good-looking young man, And she didn't. She translated like terrible. And Mrs. Bing, không phải, sai rồi. So, and when you translate extemporaneously like that, and if you are corrected, then you cannot translate no more.
The block.
It's a block.
Frozen.
Yeah. So in the end, the translator from the North Vietnam side had to come over and retranslate that for Mrs. Bing. That was really terrible. Maybe she got, she got punished for that or penalized for that. But anyway, the thing about this Vietnam War is that the translator on the North Vietnamese side was a cousin of my wife.
Oh, God. That boy really.
Yeah, just family affair. Yeah, funny. And then I don't know whether you know Đặng Đức Khôi or not, but Đặng Đức Khôi and me, we were the press, and we were also in charge of dealing with the students and with the Viet Cong sympathizers that were always there creating problems. So the press spokesman for the North Vietnamese was a small guy like that. I don't know what his name is. I can't remember anymore. But chị có nhớ không? Tên cái thằng cha là cái gì? Không biết. Anyway, he's a very small guy, maybe 5 foot, and in the palace they had a red carpet rolled out in the middle. So he was walking like that, right in the middle of the carpet, and Khoi and I were coming the other way. So, and he did not go to one side or the other. He just continued to walk like that, expecting us to give him the way. Yeah. So Khoi, being very coolie, Khoi took him by the tie and he says, "Mẹ trông thấy chúng ông thì tránh xa nhưng ông đánh bỏ mẹ." The other guy was so scared. And then there were some students that were demonstrating for the South, demonstrating for the North Vietnamese and the Giải phóng miền Nam, and they were also goonish, they were goons, and we put up the posters and they tear it down, and they put up their own poster and we tear it down. We put up our own poster, they tear it down, and so on and so forth. And they put up their flag, and our people, who were all special forces, the Mr. Key's bodyguards were all special forces. They went up, took their flag down, and so they attacked us. But when they attacked the special force, of course they lose. But then the French police came and wanted to find out what's what. But they didn't speak any French, but we did, so we spoke French. We said, they just insulted the president of the Republic of Vietnam, of the Republic of France. Oh, the French police only asked for that, you know. Oh, you insult our president, you got arrested. At least they kept them for one day.
But that conference end up with a agreement that a lot of people said that that the end of South Vietnam. What happened in that one?
Well, we have to ask Mr. Nha about that. But Nha, I don't know why he hasn't written anything about that, because he should have. He's the only one that knows all the ins and outs of that, of the arm twisting of Mr. Thieu, and the promises of Mr. Nixon, and the letter from Mr. Nixon to Mr. Thieu. But then it put Mr. Thieu in a very difficult position, because if he does not, Mr. Thieu was also afraid that he would be assassinated if he does not go along. Because look at the example of President Diem. So he went along on the promise of Mr. Nixon through a letter saying that if the communists attack, then we'll punish them, then we'll bomb North Vietnam. Nothing happened like that. And then furthermore, in the end, the President Ford said that he was not aware of the letter, because if he knew about the letter from the President Nixon, he would have kept the word of the American president. Too bad. Anyway.
So did you think that
Kissinger was the one that was terrible, because Kissinger was the one that promised the Viet Cong anything they want, including keeping the 100,000 troops in South Vietnam.
Where they were.
Yeah.
So you think that the Vietnam War and that way under that agreement of that conference, because of United States through Kissinger, they want to end the war at any price? Or?
Yeah, of course, because they couldn't do anything. They here. You remember my article that I wrote, for 35 years. I said that one of our big mistakes was not to send very strong people like Dang Đức Khôi or myself, big mouth, to come and talk to the students and to the demonstrators here. Because if you send Bùi Diễm, I mean, his English is not even good. So how can he talk back to those guys? So we should have sent very early in the game. We should have sent the people to talk back to those demonstrators and tell them things. But in the end, it was too late. There was nothing we could do about it. We even did not if it weren't for President Ford, America would not have even admitted all of these refugees here. It was so bad that Khôi and myself were already ready to fly to Brazil, and because Brazil was very sympathetic to the idea of accepting a couple of 100,000 Vietnamese refugees there. Yeah. Xin tí nước ạ.
But look back to that day. What do you think that South Vietnam could do, and then that make the end of the Vietnam War better for them?
Nothing, because in the end they cut not only the economic, not only the military aid, no more weapons, no more air support, and not even more economic aid. So there was nothing that we could have done to save. And then at that time, thank you, at that time, I was thinking that I was wishfully thinking that if we got all the gasoline, we didn't have all the gasoline, we could have gone up and bombed the hell out of Hanoi. We could have dropped our Nhai Du down Hanoi, maybe even take over Hanoi. Then they have to go back because all of their divisions were down here in South Vietnam. And I remember my sister telling me afterwards that they didn't have any guns to defend Hanoi. They all they had was gậy tre.
That's one of our interviewee was having the similar opinion about that. He said that we lost the war was because the Americans go there and they took the defense position instead of offense position, and then also or the politics gone bad, and then nothing they can do about it at the end. But some other opinion also said that look at the South Korean, the American also was have present over there for a long time, but because of the government there strong, and then for the people, and they got support from the people, so they still stand well, and they even develop their economic into one of the best, economy in Asia. What do you think about that?
No,
Listen.
I don't think so, because the first, our government was not as bad as the American press made it to be. The South Korean dictator at that time was pretty bad himself, but that was under Eisenhower, and Eisenhower, being a five-star general, would have defended South Korea anyway, with or without MacArthur being fired. So in the end, I don't know whether you know it, but in the end, each soldier in South Vietnam had 6 bullets a day and 1 grenade every other day. How can you fight the war in that way? And then no gas. The reason why I said that it wouldn't work if we decided, or if Mr. Thiệu decided to go north, it wouldn't work because the generals in Da Nang told him that they would shoot our plane down if we went past the 17th parallel, because they're afraid of the Chinese coming in.
Yeah. But all those happened when it's a little too late, because the public in America was very much tired, and the war was so long,
Yeah,
and the casualty was so bad that nobody can support it anymore.
exactly, yeah.
So, okay, we're back to your life. You have a really interesting life that we all can learn a lot from. So what was you doing on the day of April 31st, 1975? Where were you and what was you doing?
April 30th.
April 30th, I'm sorry, 1975.
No, April 30th, I was already in Singapore, because I came back from Japan. I was a lecturer in one of the universities in Japan, the 1st of April. Then I flew back. When I flew back, I went right into Mr. K's house, and I saw all these politicians there. And everybody has had a story to tell of how they left central Vietnam, how they evacuated via the coast of via the highway, so on and so forth. And Mr. Key was already telling people that, oh, I have a pilot that flies his plane back to Saigon, and he told his wife and kid to just stay behind, and then we'll find a way to save them, things like that. I mean, all these tear-jerking stories. And then some pilots said that, General, our boss, if you say the word, we'll bomb the hell out of Teal, and we'll take over. But at that time, you know that every big wig within the Vietnamese, the South Vietnamese government had a shadow who was a CIA man. Even me, as Vietnam Press Director, I had a so-called advisor who was CIA, and he had a PhD in journalism, but still, I mean, he shadowed me, and so I ended up using him too, because I know that he would report everything that I will tell him. So he and I were very good friends, but then I would use him to send the word back to no avail. But toward the end, the man who shadowed Mr. K had an excuse saying that his wife or his daughter-in-law was having a baby or something like that, so he left. And then when I saw that general left, I saw that it was the end of Mr. K, because then they have given up on Mr. K doing anything. But on the 1st or 2nd of April, that general came back, suddenly appeared again, and then saw Mr. Key every day and told him that don't you worry about it, don't you do anything to, because Mr. Teo is going to resign, and then you take over, and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's a lot of lies, and it was no good. But we couldn't have done anything else to do, and these poor generals that did not, those heroes of the Vietnam War,
Kill themselves.
Yeah, that killed themselves, and because they didn't see Mr. Key also had an idea that maybe we go down to the fourth region to fight from there. But it was just wishful thinking. There was nothing much we can do about it, because the Viet Cong was all over the place. 20 divisions.
Mr. Nguyen, what do you think about the American policy toward South Vietnam during and after the war?
The Americans, whenever they do something, they want to be boss. They don't want to listen to the Vietnamese. They don't want to listen to even the Afghans now. They don't want to listen to Maliki in Iraq. They want to be the boss and tell the people what to do. And if you don't listen to them, then they try to kick you out. they fought the Vietnam War by a regular war game, like a regular war game. Bomb the hell out of them, uh, find and destroy, things like that. But many times, I remember when I was the interpreter for General T, I was explaining to those admirals and those generals, I said, the Vietnam War is everywhere. Because you are now in our office, but you may die as soon as you reach the gate. Because, some Viet Cong is going to throw you a grenade or something. So the war is everywhere. It's not a war of a regular war. So you have to understand that, because Mr. T was very funny. When I was his translator, I was supposed to be his translator and press officer. But when he received the admiral of the fleet, of the 7th Fleet, the admiral would ask him something, and then I would translate, and he'd say, hồi này thằng Ye nó học hành đàng hoàng không mày?
Who's yeah?
thằng Ye, thằng Pierre là thằng con trai ông, his son. I was supposed to teach him English and his 2 sisters English, con Hồng với con gì đó. And mình nói nói chuyện một hồi. I was talking for quite some time, and then he said, thôi trả lời cho nó đi.
So he more like kind of using time to think in his head what to do, or what he was trying to do that.
He was trusting me to give him the answer, to give his answer.
But he didn't want to say yes right away. He kind of go around and say,
No, yeah. Dạ đo như là, so I would tell the admiral, I'd say, well, this and that. I will explain the characteristics of the counterinsurgency war and so on and so forth. That's all mine. So by the time he walks out, the admiral says, hey, where did the general pick up all those knowledge? So I said, well, no, he grew up from becoming going to military school when he was a kid, and then from sergeant he went up to become an officer and 5-star general. Yeah, he's unbelievable.
How you compare President Diem and President Thieu?
It's not so difficult. I like President Diem better because Thieu was very clever guy, does not trust anybody. Mr. Diem was very mature, very patriotic. So is Thieu anyway, but tell you one of the stories when Thieu came to Houston, and all these former province chiefs were meeting with him, and he says, how do we work with the Vietnamese press here in this city? And some of the province chiefs said, well, Mr. President, just give them $5,000 and you can buy every one of them. And Thieu says, oh, you are misjudging Mr. Linh. You can't buy him. And so when he was president back there, some people were telling him because I have my spies, around.
Mr. Nguyen, we were comparing President Thieu and President Nguyen, and you said it was not hard to distinguish one from other. Please continue.
But Thieu is very clever. Some of the people around him said, Mr. President, don't trust this guy Linh because he's K's man. And Thieu says, you don't know anything. Linh is nobody's man. So that means that he's very clever. But of the two men, I trust Mr. Diem more because he's a man of his word. He's a real patriot. And he wouldn't do anything that would hurt the country. And if given the opportunity, he probably with his brother could outplay the Americans. But the Americans were using force, using those generals to kill him, so on and so forth. That was very unfortunate. And the killing, the murder of Mr. Diem announces the end of South Vietnam, to my estimation.
Even it prolonged for 10, over more 10 years after that, that you think that is the announcement of the death of South Vietnam. Mr. Nguyen, so when you come to the United States, this time to live, not for school anymore, who were coming with you, and then what did you do to rebuild your life again?
Well, on the 30th of April, I was in Singapore already. Because at that time, my company was exporting shrimp outside Vietnam. So I had, as an exporter, I had a multiple entry exit visa. So when I came back from Japan, I went to Mr. K, and I didn't see him doing anything or let his officers do anything. So that night I went back home, contacted one of my American former Navy officer who was the captain of my shrimp boats. And I said that to make preparation to use one of the shrimp boats to evacuate my family. So the next day I flew out to Singapore, and my wife and three kids, and my sister-in-law and her kid used one of the shrimp boats captained by this American, and they were under, under the floor. They were put under the floor, and they went out on the Saigon River, unbeknownst to the two Vietnamese assistant on the boat, because they were picked up at the club, at our boat club, and then the captain took the boat down river to pick up the two fishermen, two Vietnamese fishermen. So way down river they got arrested they got stopped by the river police and said, "Có dấu ai không?" And of course those two Vietnamese, they didn't know that we had the whole family down under the floor, and the kids already had Finnegan, yeah, so everybody was asleep. So, and when they saw that the Vietnamese fishermen didn't know anything. Of course, they let it go. And I was already in Singapore and talking to Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's private secretary about my family coming. But you know, the funny thing is that Singapore, if they follow the law, they're not afraid of prime minister or anything. So when our boat came, they said, no, you stay 2 miles out, cannot come in. And the secretary of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew called the immigration people. They said, no, they don't have visa, they don't get in. So that's how they work. It's very good. So I had to prepare all the paper, and by that time, the CIA guy who was my shadow was working in Singapore.
Oh, wow.
So that was a stroke of luck. Because then I called him, I said, hey, can you do something? He says, well, what can I do? Because if you want to go to the States, you got to have a medical certificate. And there was an American ship, American military ship that was leaving. So this guy was using his CIA contact to delay the ship.
Wow.
Until the police, until the border police, the immigration police took my wife and kids back to that American ship for,
Medical checkup.
you know, for the certificate of a medical certificate. And that's how they got to get on the boat, you know, on board. So that was already 2 weeks after they arrived, and every day I would go out there, rent a boat, go out there and give them something to eat, things like that. So they came back to the hotel, escorted by the immigration people, and they took change of clothes and shower and everything. Good meals, and the next day they would go out, because I had already, thank God, I had $10,000,
Wow.
enough to buy all the tickets to the United States. So
How much was a ticket from Singapore at that time?
1,000,
1,000?
yeah,
Still very much the same, isn't it?
yeah, and it was a lot of luck, because the next day they were put on a French plane, not Air France. The French plane was
Pan Am?
a French company.
Pan Am?
French company.
Or
No,
France?
yeah, on a French plane to fly to Paris, and then from Paris to go to Washington, D.C. So while waiting on the plane, for the plane to take off, the immigration guy,
Come.
you know, do some small talk. So they say, oh, so now you are going back to Saigon, stop in Saigon. Huh? Oh, my wife had a shock of her life. She took everybody out of the plane right away. And it turned out that that cargo plane or something was supposed to stop in Saigon,
Oh my God.
and then go to Paris.
Oh, I see.
So, you know, we changed plane, took Pan Am, and went to Paris. And then when we got to Paris, we got news that we cannot get into the United States. There was no visa. But my daughter, Mi Châu, was already studying in the United States. And in 1975. She was born in 1954. So in 1975, September of 1975, she would be 21 and qualified to sponsor the family. So Dr. Khoi was there with her, and he took her to the immigration, and so the immigration said, okay, we'll make you're not 21 yet, because it was April, So, but okay, we count the years, we don't count the month. So they gave the visa for everybody to come in. Golly.
After that, where you will live?
After that, we spent a couple of months here. We bought a house here. The kids went back to school, did very well. And and Mitchell by that time already graduated from American University. She wanted to get married. Okay, so we married her off. And then by that time, Quốc Hưng had finished school in UT,
Oh, wow.
University of Texas, Austin, and he wanted to get married to his girlfriend, so we married him off. And we tried to buy a couple of businesses. We ran a restaurant here, didn't work.
One time you did Tiffany Bakery. How was
Yeah, and then we bought into Tiffany license. We bought a lot of Tiffany's, and but we didn't do anything that was successful here because there were too many rich Vietnamese. Mr. Lac, for example, he had millions and millions, and he would buy restaurants right and left, and so how can you compete with? All we had was $100,000. How can you compete with Mr. Thân Trọng Lac? So I went down to Houston to look around, and at the mall owner had some stores for rent because he thought he's a mall owner, but he thought that he can own a restaurant in the mall. So he put out a lot of money to set up those restaurants, but he lost a lot of money, so he wanted to sell those restaurants. So we got a good deal. We bought a Tiffany, and afterwards we bought a hamburger, hot dog, barbecue.
Phở? No phở.
No pho. So, and my wife and the kids moved down there, and
So then you become businessman until you retire.
yeah.
Of course.
No, until we sold everything, because it was too much work. So I went into the newspaper business. No, newspaper business is just for fun. Yeah, but I went into the NGO business.
Non-profit.
Yeah, to take care of the refugees, get jobs for them, give them consulting them psychologically, mental health, and that sort of thing. I did that for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay. Well,
and now I'm retired.
you retired.
But then I cannot stay home watch TV, so I have to go back and take care of the old people.
Oh, okay.
So I'm taking care of the old Vietnamese people.
You do that for volunteer or for business?
Volunteer. Yeah.
I see. Okay. And well, your life like comprised of 5 lives there. And how is your family? Do you still keep traditional very much, or how the kids and how the children, how you bond the kids together?
Yeah, we're still very traditional. For example, the kids, and now for my 80 years, they're going to throw a party for me a couple of weeks from now, and every member of the family from all over the place is going to come back. That would be fun. And when not the children are all married now, but when the grandchildren get married, it's still very traditional. You know, very traditional.
Okay, what is the lesson you learned from your life that you want to share with the young generation?
Lesson. I think that if they can keep the Vietnamese tradition, it'll be nice, because the Vietnamese culture is something that the young people should appreciate. And if they have, whenever I think about it, it's pretty sad,
Why?
because they have to mainstream in order to be able to, even if when they came they're only 5 years old. Now they got to mainstream. Like that Navy man whom, he came when he was 5. Yeah. And then like Chloe also, she came when she was 8 years old. So
Grow down, you mean?
yeah, Chloe now. And so they really, I don't expect them to be very Vietnamese, but at least they should try. And some of the cultural traditions of Vietnam, like taking care of your old people instead of the nursing home, or where you vegetate and then die. I can understand, but if they cannot do that, I think that's big loss. It's a big loss.
What do you expect from the young generation?
I don't think that I can expect them to take back Vietnam. Let's be realistic. I don't think that you can expect the older people to take back Vietnam. So the only thing that we can do is to, personally, I think that the people who are in Vietnam themselves, the Vietnamese themselves, will rise one day on account of the Chinese trying to take over the country. I think that one of the things that they can do is for the armed forces, the Viet Cong army, to rise, kick out all these old men, bureaucrats, party men, and to go on from there. So maybe we have a military dictatorship, but at least it's not communist. At least it's going to be, and then the way I look at it is that the Chinese communists are trying to take over Vietnam as a step to Southeast Asia. But that's why the Americans are trying to play around with Vietnam and come back and flex their muscles a little bit and maybe stop the Chinese communists from expanding to south, expanding south. And if they have the Japan and South Korea up north, they'll be okay. And now they're trying to do something with Russia. And if Russia and on the other side, if they have, the thing that I'm worried is the Middle East, because the Middle East is a very, very difficult problem. Because the Middle East is not only the Al Qaeda or the Taliban, but it's also the rivalry between two uh, two atomic countries like India and Pakistan and Kashmir in the between, and Tibet. It's a lot of problems. I don't know how Mr. Obama is going to, and his game of trying to appease everybody no good.
Well, if you have one sentence to the young people, what that would be? One briefly sentence so they can remember.
One sentence.
Yes.
That's tough. Should be one whole page.
Quarter page.
No, I think that there's, I'm pretty proud of the achievements of our young people. Now, if on top of that achievement they still try to keep as much as possible the good Vietnamese traditions, then I'm happy. Then I'll die happy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nguyen, for unfold your life and share your experience with the young people. We, on behalf of Vietnamese American Heritage Foundation, we heartfelt thank to you and wish you a lot of health and happiness.
Thank you.
Thank you.